what we're covering. So again, we're doing for loops today. For loops. Right? Again, while loops, condition. We don't know how many times you want the while loop to actually repeat our code. Okay? So we use while loops when we don't know if we're going to go 5 times or 50 times. But we know we do have a stopping condition. Sometimes you want your loop to go indefinitely. So for example, if we're writing a server, users can connect to your server at any time. I know some of you probably Google stuff at like 3:45 a.m. Google was like, why the heck are they connected to us at 3:45 a.m.? But our code has a while loop in there that always listens for new connections. Now you all hopefully starting to at least conceptualize how the things you use every single day actually work. Somebody had to code Google. Somebody had to code this whole Microsoft Windows. Somebody had to code Microsoft Office. How do you think they did that? Now, granted, I don't know if you all have the skills yet to really put it together, but at least you can start to conceptualize, oh, here, they probably have a loop. Here, they might have this or that, or this or the third, whatever the case may be. You can start breaking down the software, the systems, the tech, down to a more basic form. Right? How does this work? So when, for example, you have your GPS location, it's updated every 30 seconds. What do you think they're using? Satellites. They are using satellites in the code. But most likely a while loop, right? That waits every 30 seconds to run some code to connect to a satellite and back. Right? What do you think happens when a user scrolls to the top of the screen? Huh? It refreshes, right? Right? So maybe not a while loop, but an if statement. If user reaches top of screen, or really is the bottom of content, refresh or pull more content down. It's like, oh, can you please put your shirt down? Let's read this one. All right. So these different programming structures, we can start visualizing in our programs. Things that we use. So as you can imagine, the things that we're using, we can break it down. Okay, so let's talk about for loops. Different than a while loop, for loops are really good when we know exactly how many times we want to loop something. Now, granted, when I say we know, maybe not as the programmer, the human being programming our code, but we can get a number of how many times exactly we want to go through this loop. And that'll be important as we talk about arrays later on. Okay, knowing exactly how many times we want to loop. So, again, what is the difference between a while loop and a for loop? Exactly. Right. Based on a condition. Everybody get the difference between the two. While loop, you don't necessarily know how many times you want to loop, but it's based on a condition. A for loop, on the other hand, we know exactly how many times we want to loop this, or at least we can get a number that tells us how many times. So let's say I want to print out hello world 5 times. All right, 5 times. So previously, again, programmers are lazy. We try to avoid retyping things as much as possible. But previously, when we wanted to print out hello world 5 times, we would have went like this. There's 1, and then we would have just copied. I run this,
What's going to print hello world 5 times?
Real simple. Okay, this should have been, oh yeah, I could have just wrote this on a napkin somewhere. This wasn't real simple, you guys can catch that.
Okay? Huh? I do what? You have to print 5 times? I just wrote the code to print to the console 5 times. Oh, you just, okay. I mean, I'm here to help. Now, granted, I hope that wasn't a real question, but
If it was.
all right.
So we have, very simple. Now, what the user was like, bump all that 5 times, I want you to print it out 500 times. All right? You really think Dr. Brown is going to write out hello world 500 times? For the user to turn around and say, actually, I meant 5,000, I didn't mean 500. You can go, you know where.
All right. So, what can we do instead?
Create a loop. For loop, I'll get to the for loop in a second. But we can use a loop. A loop makes it so much simpler.
Let's say we want to print this 5 times. Let's use a while loop because that's what we've been using. Let's say int equals 0. In programming, we always start at what? 0. While count is less than what? 5, right? Print this out. How many times is hello world going to be printed to the console?
Indefinitely.
So, as we increase the value of count, we count how many times we do this. If it becomes equal to 5, we've done it 5 times. Because we start at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 0 is the first time through. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once it equals 5, the loop stops.
So this actually prints out indefinitely. Why? We never change the value of count. Count will be 0 the entire time. So if count is 0, it's always going to be less than 5. So what do we need to do? Right. Add 1 to count each time we go through this loop. So how do we add 1 to a variable? Plus, plus. Plus adds 1 to a variable. Count plus plus. Now, how many times will hello world be printed to the console? 25 times.
Well, that's the question.
Right. Because each time we go through this loop, we're printing it 5 times. If we go through the loop 5 times, 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 5 is 25. I'm not asking you all advanced algebra. Say 5x plus 10 equals 24. Now, y'all better know how to answer that one. 5x plus 10 equals 24. Everybody know how to go through this question?
You said 5x plus 10
equals 24. 5x minus 10 equals 24. Equals 24. Huh? 24 over 5? No, 34 divided by 5 is not 7. 7. No, 6 points. It's 6 point something. Everybody should know how to do this.
Oh, God, here we go. Lord have mercy. Yeah, you're right, but I am very disappointed. What are you all learning? You all should have been in algebra. Let's see. 5x minus 10 equals 24.
What is the first step, y'all? To both sides, right? Everybody know how to do this?
Plus 10 plus 10. Then we got 5x equals 34.
Then what's the next step, y'all?
Divide both sides by 5. I don't know what that is. It's 6 point something, something, something.
Everybody know how to do that, right? That is basic. Sorry.
That was scaring me. Okay. So this prints out 25 times. We only wanted to print out 5 times, so we take out 4 of these, and it works. Count starts at 0. Spit out the print line hello world 1 time. Count plus plus, now count is 1. While count is less than 5, it still is. Hello world, count is 2. Count is 3. Count is 4. And you see now count equals 5. Is the while loop condition true or false?
It's false. It's less, it needs to be less than, it's equal to. That is not a true statement. No.
So our while loop stops. Our while loop stops and ends our program. That makes sense? You hate it when there's like little dirt on your mouse, scratching the heck out of you. Yeah. All right. So we did it in a while loop.
But we know how many times we want to do this. We want to do it 5 times. So we can do it in a while loop. However, a for loop is more appropriate for this situation because we know we want to do it exactly 5 times.
But even before that,
What if we want to read in how many times we want to do this? We're going to read from the console. Hey, user, how many times do you want to print hello world? What do we need to read from the console?
and then of course we need a scanner. So int max prints equals, how do we read in integer constant. Huh? What do you do? Huh? How do we read a number from the console?
Parsing.
The minimum integer. Next input, dot next line. All right. So I'm gonna let y'all know a secret.
You know what advanced mathematics? I ain't got no for you.
I done forgot all of that. I took count 2.
Ask me about my intervals.
That's y'all got that. I don't got it no more. As soon as I finished that class, I took all that information and just threw it out. All right, what y'all need to learn? It's important. It's really important for your future. It's critical. All right, system out there, print line, hello world, max prints. What do I need to replace so our program works for our new input? That's how many times we want it to print. What do I need to replace? Count? Count just knows what count we're on. So I want it to print as many times as the user types in. So in my program, what do I need to modify to do that? There we go. Count is less than the max prints. That's how many times we want it to print. You see, I, the programmer, am no longer specifying how many times. Honestly, as the programmer, I don't know. Until the user types in something, I won't know how many times my program is going to print this out. They can print it out 4. You can print it out 50. Who knows? Whatever the user decides. Right? And our program now is more responsive. So the user can type in 500. Now, I don't know if the visualizer will do it, but we'll see. Yeah. So the visualizer can't do it because it's a phone. But in a normal programming environment, it would print it out 500 times. All right. But again, we know how many times we want to loop this. The programmer, us, the human being programmer, we don't know the actual number, but we know max prints will hold that number eventually. So we can use a for loop. Right? It simplifies this a little bit. So we take out the while loop. We no longer need count. Built into the for loop is something that keeps track of that. So what do you think the key word is for a for loop? What is the key word? For. All right. Pretty. Well, you can't run this yet. You can't run it. Are you trying to run it? What you had before? Yeah, you put a 500 in, it's not going to happen.
I'm listening to
Yeah. All right. So instead of a while loop, since we know there's a number, there is a number, we just don't know what that number is, we can use a for loop instead. The key word of a for loop is for. And then the first thing we can do is create a variable to keep track of our count. So oftentimes you'll see int 0, while I is less than max prints. Each time we go through this loop, increment I. Open and close bracket. And that's our for loop. So for int I equals 0, I is less than max prints, I plus plus, print this out. All right, so we've modified our while loop to now work. So just like before when we had count, the for loop creates a variable I. I starts at 50. And each time we go through, it increments I by 1, as you can see up there in the top right, or the middle right, the middle of the screen. It's going to keep incrementing I all the way up until it gets to 50. Once I equals 50, it's no longer less than max prints, it's equal to it. So that's false. It stops the for loop, ends the program. All right. So for loops,
What are the two different scenarios where we use a while loop or a for loop? While loop is used when? Exactly. And you don't know how many times you want it to loop. For loop is good for what? Exactly. There's a finite number. Now, granted, again, when we are programming our code, we may not know that finite number. But we have a variable that that will hold the value, max prints. Right? Before our user runs our program, we don't know the number. 50 won't be into the program yet. But we have a variable, max prints. Okay?
all right, so let's create,
A smart pin. Right? Smart pin. This smart pin is so smart. When it gets low on ink, it notifies the user. All right? Each time it gets low on ink, the user, I need some more ink. Okay? It sends you a little text message. Smart pen by Dr. Brown is low on ink.
okay? So, let us have a variable to hold how much ink is currently int max ink, int current ink, int low ink threshold. See, we want to warn the user before they get to 0. All right, they get to 0. What are you doing?
iPhones, like I told you, when you have a certain percentage of battery left,
Yeah. So iPhones actually die when they have like 2% battery.
Yeah.
They don't die at 0 because they try to protect you. If they died at 0, the data that you were using before would most likely be gone. So it dies at 2 gracefully. Meaning it saves all your work, it saves the data that you were working on before it actually dies because you didn't charge it.
But is there a way to let the user know that what percentage you're trying to stop at 10%?
Yeah.
Is there a way to say, like, oh,
Well, usually 10% is like probably going to plug this thing in. Like, usually that's what Apple decided was the lowest threshold. Obviously, I know some people who run it close, just like they gas tank. So, there's that. Like, I know I had a car, when I was in college, well, that gas tank was right neat all the time. But I know I had a car where you would get under 20 miles left, and it would just say low. You wouldn't tell me how many miles because oftentimes I'll run that thing down to 0. Pull up the gas tank with 0 on it. But so it just depends on how the programmers decided what was the appropriate threshold.
maybe to add an extra, like, 5%, 5%. Not scary.
So let's see, how should we do this? Let's say the user uses the pin 10 times. Each time we're going to randomly generate how much ink they use. Okay? So when we want to randomly generate something, we need random. New random. A random, right? All right, let's say they use it 10 times again. Yeah, I do. I is less than 10, I plus plus. You see here, I know I'm only doing it 10 times, so it's okay to put I is less than 10. Oftentimes I avoid doing that, and instead have that in the variable. I'm just going to keep it simple. I is 10. All right. Current ink level, let's say max ink level equals equals 100. Our current ink equals max ink. You know, when you buy something,
We would like to think it's cool. Unless it's a new, like, electronic device, and they give it to you on 10%.
anyway,
Okay, the current.
you could, yeah. Do you want to make it right? How you feel? All right, then we got to declare our random object above it. We need to use it. And we do rand next int. Let's do it between 75 and 100. Because I don't want you to start on 0. Or do you want to start at 0? So the range is 25, 100 minus 75, plus our minimum, which is 75. Our lowering threshold, to Jairus' point, 10 ain't scary enough. So we're going to say our lowering threshold is 5. Okay. The user uses their pen 10 times. We're going to see what happens along those 10 times. Each time they use it, we're going to randomly generate a number for how much. So int usage equals rand.nextInt. What y'all think? How much do they use?
The 21.
15 to 20%, or 15 to 30% of it? That's too high. 10 to 20%. How about that? So 20 minus 10 plus 10. All right? Then what do we need to do? What shall we do at this point? We have how much they use. We have how much is currently in our pen. What do we need to do now? Subtract how much they use from what the current value was. The current ink equals the old value of current ink minus usage. How can we shorten that line? So again, Java evaluates right side first and then stores on left. So it takes the current value of our ink, subtracts usage from it, takes the result of this and stores it back into current ink. We can shorten this line. If you were trying to just modify a variable, you take this down to just minus equal. So subtract, take the result of that, and store it back in. Those two lines are identical in terms of functionality. This line and this line are identical in terms of functionality. They both take the current value of our ink, subtract usage, and then store it back into current. All right. So now what? All right. Before that, though, what if they use 20%, but there's only 10% left? Technically, we'd have a negative number, right? So what we can do is put a check in here. If current ink is less than 0, set it equal to 0. That way they can never have ink less than 0. If current ink less than 0, current ink equals 0. All right, that's just a check, because you can't have negative. You got to think about this logically. If I was to write a smart pen program, obviously you can't have negative ink. Doesn't make any sense. Now, the way our program is, we're randomly generating how much they use, so our program allows it, unfortunately. But in a real world scenario, it wouldn't. All right. Now, what do we do? Yep.
So the first line of 114, there's an open bracket. Where is it going to now?
I haven't put it yet. I haven't put the close part. Because I'm not done. I want all this to happen inside the for loop. So what do we need to do now? We made sure that they can't go less than 0. What do we need to do? We need to give the user the notification, right? So what should we write?
Can you tell them the one when they have low resolution?
Yes. So how do we do that? Is less than or equal to, what should I put here? We could put 5, but do we have a variable that holds that value? Low heat threshold. That way, you said what? Wrong what?
The variables wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna capitalize it. That way, we can just modify this up here as much as we want. So 30%. Loading threshold is 60%. And we change it up here once, it changes throughout our whole program. Wherever we use loading threshold. Dot out, dot print line. Hey buddy. Sun is getting real low. All right. System, dot out, dot print line. Please enter more. And so let's have the user add more ink. So current ink plus equal integer dot parsent input dot next line. What if the user types in 1,000? Can't have 1,000 ink. So let's put another check. If current ink greater than 100, current ink equals 100. We close that if statement, we close this if statement, and we close the for loop. So you see now, we're starting to build more robust programs, meaning they respond dynamically and more effectively than before. Right? And to your point, let's tell the user how much ink they use. System, dot out, dot print line. You used of your ink. And then at the end of all of this, let's tell them what their current ink position, current ink status is. System, dot out, dot print line. You have plus current ink left. Just so our user knows what the heck is going on with the pen. Now again, if we were running a real smart pen device, we could have a loop that checks our current ink level every 30 seconds and displays the status. When it gets low, we would have code in there that sends off a notification to the user inside the system. This is how those programs are developed. Just like this, with loops and if statements. So inside that if statement, instead of a system.out.print line, we would have create message, hey buddy, sun is getting real low, notify user with that message. All right, let's see what happens here. Visualize execution. I know it's 50, so we'll just go through this real quick. I need to create my scanner. Oops. go back to edit code, just in case we do end up hitting that threshold. I don't know how many times it will. They put some input in here. Yeah. All right, let's see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we're even going to hit these if statements, because they may never hit threshold. So random, we put our max ink is 100, our current ink is 89. All right, that's, you know, I made this pin for y'all, but I don't give it to you at 100%. I need to save some money. I'll give it to you at 89. The low ink threshold is 5. We create our for loop. The user used 17%. Now, your numbers are going to be different than mine when you run your program. Because we're randomly generating this. They use 17. So I let them know you use 17 of your ink down here. Current ink was 89 minus 17. So their current ink is now 72. If current ink is less than 0, it's not, it's false. Right here, just in case they hit underneath this threshold, I had some input in here for this line. Again, I don't know if I'm ever going to need those numbers. I don't know. I just had to put them in before I run the program as a visualizer. If current ink is less than or equal to threshold, it's not. So we keep going. You have 72 left. They used 18 this time. You use 18 of your ink. The current ink is 54. It's not less than 0. It's not less than or equal to the threshold. 54. They use 13 this time. Current ink is 41. It's not less than 0. It's not less than the threshold. 41. They use 13 again. It's down to 28. About to get that 20% notification here soon. 11. All right, we're at 17 now. We're getting close. 16. All right, now you know this is going to put them below the threshold. 17 minus 16. 1%. Right? Current ink is 1%. We go forward. Is that less than or equal to the low ink threshold? Is current ink less than the low ink threshold? Yes, current ink is 1, low ink threshold is 5. So we are less than. So our program is going to print out, hey buddy, sun is getting real low. All right. Please enter more. Then we read in current ink plus equal this first line. So our current ink is now 1001. Makes no sense. So this if statement is going to hit true. If current ink is greater than 100, it is. Set it equal to 100. And actually, I should put set it equal to that way. I can just change the value of max ink up here, and it reflects all throughout my program. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and end it here. And then even the 0, I could put minimum ink threshold. But maybe, I don't know, you could have negative. Well, the minimum ink threshold would be 2 to gracefully shut down. Oh, that's a lot. Somebody has to build it.
I do feel bad for the notifications now. They did all that just for me to just for me to look at my phone and be like, I got some at least some